I feel like I am on an assignment today. I feel like I had no choice but to speak the message that God has asked me to speak. And so I want us to listen. I want us to lean in. I want to hear some amens. I want to hear some taking that. I want to hear some grabbing a hold, because it's like God throws stuff out. And sometimes we're so passive and we're so like laid back, and God's really trying to help us. And we're like, yeah, maybe, maybe not. And so we got to get on the forefront. We got to actually lean in today to what God's saying. Because I have an announcement to make to you, Shoreline Church, whether this has been your church for 5 minutes or for 5 years or for longer than that. I have an announcement I want to make kind of in the spirit to you, that God put a word on my heart, and God said this year is the year where Shoreline has to incline. Where Shoreline has to incline. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't particularly like inclines. In fact, I have a treadmill that I've had for many years in my home, and over the years, I built myself up to a pretty good level of fitness. I run every day. I do about 7 miles. I can run without actually slowing the thing down. Like I'm doing good for someone that's almost 50, right? I'm like trying to stay with it, stay healthy. But there's one button on my treadmill that I have never used, and I never intend to use, and I really don't know why they put it on the treadmill, because really it's just a real waste of space. And that button is the button that says incline. I'm like, nobody got time for that. Like, I'll run, I'll go the distance, but I ain't inclining anywhere. It's just a waste of my energy. That's just not necessary, right? And so I am good on the flat, but inclines are not something I would choose to do. And I'm here to let you know that God is almost saying over the house today, you've got really good on the flat. Like God's like giving you an applause to say, well done, Shoreline. You have built something that has consistency in it and depth to it, has my heart in it. And you've been going and you've kept going and you've served and you've shown up and you've gone from one small group to multiple services and reaching people for Jesus and planting. Like, good job. Like you built the stamina. And God's like, you did all of that so that at this moment in time, we can together press the incline. Now, the thing about the incline is it's going to demand something from you that's different than what got you thus far. The incline's going to work a set of muscles in you that you were not working before when you were just remaining on the flat. But here's the thing. If you want to see what God has for you, if you want to experience what God has for you, then you're going to have to go to where God is calling you. And so often we want God to bring things lower, but I'm letting you know that the Bible tells us in Isaiah 55, verse 9, it tells us that his ways are, that his thoughts are. Okay, that was like 3 people, so we'll try again. His ways are, right, his thoughts are, right? It's not a trick question. The Bible tells us his ways are higher, his thoughts are higher. And I want you to know something about God. He doesn't bring his ways lower. Right? So he'll come low, he'll comfort us, he'll be alongside us, he'll be there for us, but he doesn't bring all that stuff lower. Instead, he says, you must come higher, right? You must come higher and think the way I think, see the way I see. It's like when you have people come over to your home and they're your friends and you love them and you're excited they're coming, but you also know they have toddlers. And so before they arrive, what do you say? You're like, everybody put the stuff higher. Like, get my vase, move it higher. Get the candles, move them higher. Because you know that the toddler doesn't understand the difference between their rattle and your vase. And so you're not removing things because you don't want them to enjoy them, but you know they're not ready to enjoy them. They don't understand the value of what is valuable. And so you, as a someone that doesn't want them to harm themselves, move things higher. God is exactly the same. God lifts some stuff higher because he knows if he was to give it to you now, you would harm yourself with it instead of actually benefit from it. So some of you are like, God, if you just give me $1 million, I will. And God's like, you can't even run a $10 budget. Like, why would I give you $1 million? Like, that would be an irresponsible parent. It's like, God, I'm ready for that woman. God's like, no, you are acting like a fool. You are not ready for anybody else in your life till you get your own don't act together. So we're asking God for stuff, and God's like, no, I'm not bringing it lower. I'm waiting until you come higher so that when you get it, it's a blessing instead of actually a burden in your life. And I feel God going, okay, Shoreline, you did good. This is awesome. And you are ready for higher. You are ready for going to another level with me. I was recently in Switzerland. And the thing about Switzerland is there ain't nothing that's lower. Everything is higher. You want to see the view, you have to go higher. And I had that moment, like you are going to have that moment, where you have to choose whether you are willing to put the work in to go see what is available to you, but you cannot expect the mountain to come and show you what is at the top of it. The mountain's going to say, no, come up and I'll show you something different. This is a time for you as a church to press incline. It's a time for you to press incline in your commitment, in your conversation, in the things that you're believing for the future, in the way you pray, in the way you worship. It's time to come up higher. God wants you to come up higher. And so I want to help us today to go on this incline journey as a church together, for us as Shoreline to incline with God. And I want to take us to a story in the Bible where there was the invitation to an incline, but the incline was going to be costly, and the incline was going to be demanding, but the incline was also going to be so rewarding. And it's a story that's hard for us to often read in the Bible because it feels like, God, this is like God, why would you do that? Like you read this story, you're like, really? God did that? God asked that? It feels like almost cruel what happens in this story. But I think it's because we're not reading it with a higher perspective. And once we start reading it with a higher perspective, it will make sense to you today for your journey and what God is requiring of you. And the story is in Genesis 22. And in Genesis 22, it just has a subheading of what this passage is about. And it says, Abraham is tested. We're about to read the story where God asks the question that seems so awful. Abraham, I want you to take your son, and I want you to sacrifice your son, and I want you to actually kill your son. And you're like, God, why would you ask that from someone? But you need to understand that there's always a bigger why when God begins to ask things that in our finite, limited mind does not make sense. God's like, no, I need to take you higher so that you can actually see why I'm asking this of you. And it says Abraham is tested. Even that word, tested, we're like, oh, I don't like tests. But can I just say to you, tests are a good thing. Because tests are telling you something. In other words, if you went for an eye test, you're going for an eye test so that at the end of the eye test, guess what? We can help you see better. You go for a hearing test so that after the hearing test, we can help you hear better. You go for a driving test so that you can get keys to a vehicle so you can go further. So a test is not about containing you. A test is about liberating you. Like if God's asking you to take a test, it's because he's like, you're ready to graduate. I'm ready to graduate you. You can leave kindergarten. It's time for you to go higher. Like we're going to have a test because you're ready. It's time. So don't be frightened in the seasons where God's testing. Actually be encouraged because he's saying you've come so far. You're ready for the test. You're going to graduate this test. And so Abraham is at the point where God comes to test him. And there's three things that's about to unfold in this story. And these same three things will unfold in Shoreline's story in the next season ahead. These three things are navigated, and you as a church and as individuals will also have to navigate these three things. And I want to take them in turn, but I'm going to talk to you about elevation, preparation, and revelation. God's going to require all these three stages in the incline that he has ahead for us. And I want to start with the first one, which is elevation. This is time, Shoreline, for elevation. This is time for things to shift. It's time for an altitude shift. You know, when I went up those mountains, the higher I began to climb, the more the atmosphere began to shift. That actually, as I went up the mountain, the air began to change. And actually, the altitude shift. Now there is such a thing as altitude sickness. You've heard that expression, right? That if you go up something too quickly or too fast and you've not allowed yourself to climatize, if you've not allowed yourself to understand the air is changing, my breathing needs to change, then you're going to have an altitude sickness issue, which is dangerous, right? And altitude sickness can even look like having a fear of heights. And I think over the last couple of years, I think the enemy has been having a subplot go on while we've navigated a pandemic and political fallout and the church falling out and all the things that we've been through for the last 2 years. The subplot of the enemy has been to make us have altitude sickness. He's like, I want you to lower your expectations. I want you to lower your beliefs. I want you to lower your commitment. I want you to lower your giving. And I want you to be fearful of going back up that mountain. I want you to have an altitude sickness. So now you're fearful about your finances, where before you would have given in your finances because you just went through a pandemic and your job just was insecure. And all of a sudden now you're coming lower in your actual confession and lower in your belief. And he's trying to ground the church because he knows there's a mountain that God's going to take us up. But if you have altitude sickness, you're going to be left behind. And I don't want any of you left behind because the mountain has your name on it. And you have no idea what God's going to do in this season, but you'll never discover it if you're not willing to begin to go up the incline. And so the elevation God has for you will require us actually changing in our altitude awareness, being able to change and handle a different type of air, a different type of conversation. And so God comes and he begins to speak to Abraham about that elevation. And it begins this way. It says, sometime later, God tested Abraham. And he said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. I want to stop right there. Because the first thing about elevation is it begins with location. In other words, God wants to take you higher, but first of all, he wants you to locate where you are. Like when you went to school, like in England, when you go to school, I don't know if it's the same over here, but you go and you sit in your classroom in the morning, and then the teacher would begin to call out names. And when your name was said, you had to respond to acknowledge the fact that you were in the room. So they would say, Charlotte, and I would have to say, here, sir, right? To let them know I'm locatable, I'm here. The lesson can begin. And in this season, you need to know God's calling a register of all the people in Shoreline Church. And when your name comes up, you have to choose if you're going to locate yourself or you're going to actually sit there quiet, not responding, but in your lack of responding, God can't include you in the inclining. So when he says, Abraham, Jeffrey can't answer for him. Well, I saw him, he's in the room. Like he just a little doesn't really want to no, you can't answer for someone else. You can't go up the mountain because Pastor Earl decided to go up the mountain, because there's going to be a moment on the mountain where Pastor Earl can't help you get up the mountain, and you need to know that you signed up for this mountain so you don't get mad at Pastor Earl, and instead you realize, no, you were in class, you said your name, and God saw you, and so you're in, right? So here I am, like God's asking you, some of you are in, out, shake it all about, and God's like, stop it. Like, this is not the okey-dokey. This is not a dance. Are you in? And if you're in, when I call your name, here I am. Here I am. I'm in service. Some of you are at home online, and I love y'all, and I'm a friend of the family, and I'm your auntie, so I'm going to say it to you. You didn't used to do church online. You used to be in the room, and something in you has lowered because the pandemic has given you an excuse, and I'm letting you know God's calling you higher. It's time for you to say, you know what? Shut the computer, get in my car, get to the house of God, get reconnected. Here I am. Here I am. And so Abraham had to answer, and you must also answer. Here I am. I'm a little fearful. I'm a little nervous, but here I am. Here I am. I'm not fully there yet in some area. Here I am. I'm a bit messed up. Made some poor choices recently. It's not like God doesn't know. He knows that your life is not what you're telling everybody it is. He knows. There's nothing he doesn't know. So you saying, here I am, is not like, oh, I didn't know. He knows exactly where you are. And he's still inviting you to elevation. Here I am. Elevation begins with location. Here I am. And then after he locates himself, then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. This is the elevation part of the incline. And there's two things I want to draw out of those verses we just read. Number one, is God confused? Because this is not his only son. Abraham had more than one son. We know about Ishmael. So God, did you get the wrong guy? Are you confused? Like there's another kid here. But see, what God is talking about is not that he's wanting everything. He doesn't want all the kids. He's just talking about one particular thing that he entrusted into the hands of Abraham. And actually, if you research the word that is used there, where it says your only son, the root word of that word only is actually your unique son. In other words, the son that had a promise attached to him. So I don't need Ishmael. I'm not talking to you about Ishmael. I'm talking to you about the thing that I gave you, that I attached a promise to, which is about more than you. That's what I'm talking to you about. That's why you need to listen, because you need God to show you the mountain. God's about to say to him, I'm going to show you the mountain. You need God to choose the elevation, because when we choose the elevation, we make it about accumulation. I'm going to go up the mountain because that'll show how great I am. I'm going to get more followers. I'm going to get bigger business. I'm going to get more money. I'm going to have success. I'm going to get the promotion. We choose mountains that are about accumulation. But when God chooses mountains, they are not about accumulation. They are about sacrifice and laying things down. And the test is that God has given every single one of us something in our life that a promise is attached to. And God's going to ask for that unique thing that you know you are given to do in the kingdom of God. He's going to ask you for that unique. And this is why. Because the promise, the thing he gave him, the Isaac, it had an insurance policy attached. Ishmael didn't. But Isaac was what God said, I'm going to give this to you. And because I own that, and you're just a steward of that, then when I ask for it back, there is an insurance policy with it, which, by the way, is why when God says, give me the first 10%, he's saying, you can keep the other stuff. But I want right now to deal with the 10%. And I want you to understand that that 10% has an insurance policy. Like I'm asking for the unique, the part that I say in my word belongs to me. And I'm telling you to give it back to me, because when you give it back to me, it has an insurance policy, which means it's already on its way back to you. So God's not asking for Ishmael, he's asking for the unique, the promise. He's not asking for everything, but he's asking, and that's why in this season, I believe that God is speaking to your leaders who hear from God, who love God, who are on their face before God about the future. And he's saying to them, I know you didn't need another building, and I know that this is not your idea, but it's not about what you want, it's about what I want. And I know I asked you to build a church, and you are, but I'm asking you also to lay the church back down, the thing of promise that is unique to what I asked you, because as you lay it down, we're going to pick it back up, and it's going to look different in this season after you're willing to release it to the increase that I have for it. So God says, I don't want Ishmael, I want the unique son. I want the thing that I promised. I want that. That's what the elevation is about. And then God says, and I will show you the mountain. And that's what I believe God needs you to be praying more than ever before. God, show me the mountain. Show me what it is that you want me to lay down. Show me what it is that you want me to come higher in. Show me, because the mountain begins to change the way we prepare. Once we know the elevation, it instructs the preparation. In other words, if I was going up a little nice hill, a little mountain somewhere, in a nice warm place, I might pack a picnic. Because the mountain, the elevation is instructing my preparation. You can go up this mountain quite easily. You can have a picnic at the top of this mountain. But if I'm climbing Everest, I ain't taking my picnic blanket. Because the mountain is instructing my preparation, and I'm going to need an ice pick, and I'm going to need different shoes, and I'm going to need some ropes, because that's why you want God to show you the mountain, because some of you are packing for the wrong elevation. And your preparation reveals your expectation. So when we read the next verse, which says, Abraham, the next morning, in other words, he didn't go away and talk about it with his mates. And that's a note for somebody in here. You've been talked out of more things by your mates that if you'd just done what God told you to do, you'd already be up the mountain. Early the next morning, Abraham got up, loaded his donkey. This is now the preparation for the elevation. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. And when he cut, listen to this, when he cut enough wood for the burnt offering, imagine that. Like he's heard God say, here's the incline. I'm telling you to go up the mountain. And by the way, the elevation is about the sacrifice of the son that you love. And so, and I need you to be willing to do. And so he goes and he's chopping the wood, knowing that with every piece of wood he chops, he is setting himself up to lay down the thing he loves the most. His preparation was his sign to God of obedience. The mountain expects me, demands from me to prepare some wood to do what God has asked me to do. Note that he didn't prepare a little side ram that he shoved in his backpack, because if God doesn't come through, I packed a ram to take care. In other words, my packing, my preparation tells you that my expectation, well, God might show up, but he might not. Your preparation, you are in the heaven to earth giving campaign. What is it? It's saying, get your wood. Are you coming up? Are you coming up empty-handed? Or are you coming up with some wood? It's not the church trying to get money from you. It's God trying to take you to a new elevation. And any elevation will ask something from you of preparation. Are you prepared to go higher? And then he prepares not just what he's going to carry, but he even prepares the company. He's like, I'll take 2 servants. He could have taken 12. I'll take 2 servants. And then he gets to a point and he says to the 2 servants, you can't come any further. Because he realized those 2 servants were prepared to come here, but they were not prepared to go there. And he's isolating the interference for the moment of obedience. He's like, when I get to the top and I actually have to put a knife in Isaac, I can't have the two helpers wrestling me to the ground, telling me, what are you thinking? Are you crazy? They don't know what God spoke to me. And so I can bring them thus far, but I can't take them the rest of the way. And by the way, for those that don't know about this part of the story, Isaac was not a baby. Like he was not some little boy. He was probably, Bible commentaries say, probably early 20s. So he's taking his son that's like late teens, early 20s. He's putting the wood, which is right there, a key of why he wasn't a baby, because he put the wood on his son's back. And then his son, who is well able to articulate, says to him, Dad, where is the offering? So not only had he prepared the wood, not only had he prepared who came thus far, but also he prepared his conversation. He was prepared for the difficult question to come, because he knew my son at some point is going to be like, Dad, what is up here? And at that moment, he said, it's okay. It's okay. Just keep walking. God's going to show up. It's okay. We're just going to go worship. It's the first time ever in the Bible the word worship is used, is at this point where he realizes this is something to do with my worship. This is something to do with my elevation of seeing God in a way I've never seen him before. And some of you need to understand you are trying to have conversations about things that you don't even know how to explain. And God didn't ask you to explain him to other people. He asked you to prepare for what he's shown you. Well, why are you giving your money to that church? You don't have to explain it. You have to say, I'm on a journey and God has spoken to me. Why are you giving your money to McDonald's? You know what I'm saying? Like you don't ask me, why are you giving your money to whatever? You don't ask people to explain it. You're like, well, that's your decision. There are some things you realize I don't have to tell you and explain it. And Abraham's just like, right now I don't need to give you an explanation. I just know that God chose the mountain. And I know if we go higher, we're going to see something higher. And God's going to make it clearer. Some of you are stuck on the side of a mountain for years, having conversations, trying to convince a group who will never go to the top with you. So we have to do our preparation. And finally, if God shows us the elevation, if we do the preparation, then God will always take us to the revelation. See, the elevation is always about a revelation of God in a way that you have never experienced God before. When you are going up the incline of disease in your body, up the incline of a bad doctor's report, and you are trusting God, and you are still reading your Bible, and you're still prepared to show up, and you're still singing and saying he's good. I'm telling you, when you are going up there, you become someone that when you get to the top of that, what you were at the bottom is different. When you get to the top of that, you're like, man, I always heard that God could heal. I always sang songs about how he healed. But until I started this journey, I had not experienced God in the way that I am now experiencing him. I have a revelation because I was willing to have an elevation. Now at the top of the mountain, he begins to lay his son down. He begins to do what God had asked him to do. And it was all the way until binding the hands and laying him down and pulling out the knife. Don't you wish God would show up just at the top? But often he doesn't just show up at the top. He waits till you bind the hands and you lay it down and you lift the knife because it's part of your revelation. And so he gets to the top, and just like at the bottom, he's asked the same question. At the top, he hears God. He's not heard him in between. There's been no conversation on the way up. There was Abraham, and there was here I am. And God gave an instruction. Nothing. Now he's at the top. And then God says, Abraham. And guess what he says? Here I am. But wait a minute. The here I am now is different than the here I am there. The first here I am was at the foot of this mountain. The second here I am is at the top of this mountain. Because the elevation has changed your location. You are now living with different air. Revelation 2 verse 29 in the Message Bible says, do you not hear? Have you not got ears to hear the wind words the Spirit is blowing through the church? And honestly, I think so many of us, we miss the wind words because we're not high enough to catch the wind words. We have everybody else's words, everybody else's opinion. I have a friend who has a farm, and recently they built a wind turbine. That sucker was so high. It was huge. And I said, why so high? I get that you need the turbine, but why? It seems extreme. And he said, in order to catch the power, I have to get past the interference. I have to get above all the buildings. And some of your life is run on limited energy. But at this level is renewable power. It's renewed every morning. It's renewed every evening because you're catching wind words, and wind words put breath in your lungs. They put life in your soul. They put dreams in your heart. The words down here are different than the words up here, which is why some of you are asking God for a word, and he's like, I'm not bringing it lower. My ways are higher, and my word will not be like everybody else's word, and my word won't be an option with everybody else's word. You're gonna have to climb higher, and that might mean leaving a friendship behind, or changing the company you keep, or altering something about your world. I want you to come higher. And as he has an altitude shift, and as he's higher, he begins to speak words of revelation. Because now I can see what I could not see at the lower level. Now I experience him in a way I didn't experience him before. And this is the first time in Scripture that the words are uttered. This mountain I name, Jehovah Jireh, God is my provider. Because at the top of the mountain, he had a revelation that he could not have at the bottom of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, he got something so deep inside him that he uttered words that had not been spoken before. Jehovah Jireh, I now see it, is who you are. I now know it is who you are. And I'm telling you, Shoreline, God is inviting you on the incline. He will not drag you. He will not force you. He will ask on the register, are you in? And your response has to be, here I am. And then God will show you the mountain to do with what he is asking you to prepare. And your preparation will reveal your expectation. And as you climb, you are going to come to a point where your here I am changes, and your language changes, and your maturity increases. For now you see something that you did not see before, that no one can take from you. And you as a church are called to be a church that has a revelation of God, that becomes hope for many that have never seen that aspect of God. He wants you to have multiplied testimonies of Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Provider, Jehovah Healer, Jehovah the one that goes before, Jehovah the Restorer. There is a revelation, but you must change your elevation. I don't know where this finds you, but I'm asking you right now in this moment, if you are willing to say, here I am, God, I'm starting the climb. I'm asking you to show me the mountain. Then I'm going to ask you to stand to your feet. You're saying as you stand, you're changing your posture as you stand. God, I don't want to do life on the flat anymore. I don't want to repeat the last 2 years going round in circles anymore. Something must change. God is inviting you, but he will not drag you. So in this moment is your moment to say, here I am. I am, as it were, calling a holy register in this moment. Abraham, put your own name in there. Close your eyes. Put your own name in there. Abraham. And I'm asking you, as you put your name in there, that your hand raise will be, here I am. So Abraham, here I am. Here I am. So lift your hand today if you are acknowledging, here I am, because once we give our location, God can begin to speak to us about our elevation. God, you are calling this church to higher ground. You're saying, Shoreline, come higher. And God, as we respond in this moment, say, here I am. God, I pray that today you would show the mountain. God, whatever the mountain is, the mountain of sacrifice, the mountain of obedience. God, I pray for a season of renewed preparation, of the logs being cut, of the sacrifice being made. I pray for conversations of a higher level. And I pray, God, for a revelation of who you are. For when Abraham got to the top of that mountain, he had only one thing to say, Jireh, you are enough.
Oh
Beautiful.
My gosh.
What a
Today
day.
has been phenomenal. Okay, I do want to say, if you've given your heart to Christ, if you made that decision to put Jesus first, would you let us know? You can text Jesus first, one word, to 97,000. We would love to follow up with you with some clear next steps.
And the reason we want to follow up with you, like Eric just said, is for next steps. We want to come alongside of you. This is the best decision that you've ever made.
I would agree.
In your whole life. It's the best decision I've ever made. I know it's the best decision Eric's ever made. And so we're celebrating with you, and so is all is heaven. And so we want you to text Jesus first, but then we also want you in Growth Track, okay? We have it every single week, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central Time. I'm on there sometimes. Eric's on there. The team is there, ready to meet you, love you, and get you connected and get you on the journey to be all that God has called you to be.
Also, I want to remind you, we are still in our Heaven to Earth offering season. Y'all, we're believing God for a new home and headquarters here in Dallas. We're doing stuff in Guatemala.
Kenya.
We're doing stuff in Kenya. We're doing stuff in Missouri. I mean, like, so many spaces are going to be impacted. So let's just continue to pray and be obedient to what God puts on our heart. There are a number of different ways you can give. I actually choose to give through the app.
Same.
We love you so much, church family. Have a wonderful week.
Bye.